Going static in a dynamic world with Hasura and Nuxt.js. Hey everyone, my name is Debbie O'Brien. I'm Head of Learning and Developer Advocate at Nuxt.js, a writer at Ultimate Courses, a teacher at View School, a Google Developer Expert, Media Developer Expert, and a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. This is one of my favorite photos. This is of me on a cruise ship on the way to Antarctica when life was normal. So it's like, oh, wish we could go back to those days. You can follow me, LinkedIn, Debbie O'Brien, or Twitter, Debs_O'Brien. So what am I going to cover today? Well, we're going to cover Nuxt.js. Yes. We're going to cover how static sites work. We're going to cover Hasura and GraphQL. And we're going to cover build hooks and trigger with Netlify deployment. And the Nuxt.js full static. I know, right? That's just like a lot to take in. Don't worry. We'll take it slow and we'll get through this together. Stay with me. Okay, so Nuxt. You should all know what Nuxt is by now. If you don't, it's an intuitive view framework. You can write Vue and you get all extra benefits and it just makes your life much, much easier. What kind of benefits do you get? Well, it's got file-based routing. What that means is you put a page in the pages folder and then you get automatic routing. You don't have to create a router.js file and you don't have to maintain it. It's just like so cool. Automatic code splitting of routes. So you don't have to do code splitting either. It's just given to you out of the box. It just works. Brilliant. Prefetching. It prefetches all those links for you. So it makes it more performant. Automatic component import. So you don't have to write import component from component. It just works. So that's all done for you. So that's really, really cool. And there's like more than 100 modules. Actually, there's more than 145 modules. You can see them at modules.nuxt.js.org. So yeah, Nuxt is amazing. What else? Nuxt, you can build progressive web apps as well. Very easily with the module. You can just like add it, bang, done. You got a progressive web app. And of course, with Nuxt, you can do server-side rendering, which is very, very cool for those that need server-side rendering. And of course, you can do static site generation, which is my favorite. And that's what we're going to talk about more today. So static sites, right? You're thinking, oh no, like static sites of the 90s. Like, okay, this is Space Jam, right? And, I started like developing websites in the 90s. And this was the websites that we used to build. And this is cool. This is one of the best websites of the 90s that you'll ever find in your life, right? And yeah, they did a better job than I did. But this is basically what static sites were like. And they were very static, right? So I get the fact that people say, I don't want static sites, I want dynamic. Let's have a look at what static sites of the 90s are, which is this one, Space Jam, and what static sites of today is. So first of all, why should you go static? So with static, there's no server. It's cheaper and safer. We're not paying for servers anymore. We don't have a server in the office. In the 90s, we used to have it in the office. So yeah, now there's no server, it's all in the cloud and it's just cheaper and safer. We have better offline support, especially, with a progressive web app. It works much better offline because you're not like waiting for that server to give you everything back. So you get better performance, and performance is key because our internet, some of us are working from home in places where internet is not great. So we're really struggling here. And that's when we really think, whoa, performance really matters. And it reduces the carbon footprint, right? So you're not having all those servers. Therefore, it's much, much better from the environment. And we've seen during this lockdown how shutting the whole world down for 2 months, the improvements that, the carbon footprint has made. Like, the beaches in Mallorca are amazing, by the way. The water's crystal clear, thanks to just shutting down. So shutting down those servers and using less servers is always going to be a good thing. So Nuxt full static. Love Nuxt full static. You don't have to expose your API to the public anymore. Now that's really, really cool. So you can decide also when to publish new content from your API by regenerating your website. So you update something and then when you're ready, then you republish it. You regenerate it and it gets published. Fully static is much faster, right? Because API calls have a little bit latency, so it always takes longer. So instead of calling the API, you have everything already called. It's in a payload folder and it's already just there. So it's much, much faster. The payload files are cached and then, you've got offline support with like a PWA module. So it's just cool. So full static. All you got to do is put target static in your Nuxt config and then run the Nuxt generate command. That's it. Easy, right? So that's it for full static. Conversation over, talk over. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye. No, I'm only messing. Okay, so how does it work? So we've got our code in GitHub, right? And basically then we have a deploy to Netlify. So it's triggered every time we do git push. It's going to go to Netlify and deploy our website. So Netlify, we have inside Netlify the Nuxt generate command, and it's going to say, okay, I need to generate my Nuxt application. So it gets all the static HTML and it generates the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and we get our beautiful Nuxt.js application with our page that says hello, right? Simple, that's it. That's all you need to do when it comes to generating your static site. What about data? Okay, yes, Michael, I get you, I know, yes. You all want data on your website, right? You all want all kind of cool stuff, not just static data. You want data, right? Okay. So what are we going to do? Well, I have a website with my conferences, and oh my God, can you see? My last conference is the 18th of September, which means I haven't put the Vue conference on this. Jilson's going to kill me, right? Don't tell Jilson that I didn't actually update my website with the conference for Vue Toronto. Oops. I know what we'll do. We will add it here right now. Okay, just don't tell him. Let's try and add it right now. So how am I going to add this? So where's my data coming from? Is it live? Is it static in my application, or where is it? So I'm using Hasura, which is a real-time GraphQL API where we can, well, it's open source engine, right? It connects your databases and it auto-generates a production-ready GraphQL backend. I'm going to show you that. Let me just quickly show you, this is how we're going to add a new table. No, you know what? Let's just go to the code. It's easier. Right. So here's my GraphQL with Hasura. So I could create a new table by just putting a table name, my workshops or whatever, for example, and a column name, and a column type. We can put in text, for example, and default value and whatever. And then once we save that, add table, we've got a new table, right? Now I've already created the table. So I've already got my conferences, as you seen from the website, right? My conferences are already there. So I have a problem that I don't have the Vue conference already added. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter for the place, because I actually spoke there last year. So I'm going to say the place equals Toronto, because I just want to filter it and find that conference. Right, so I've got this one here. So this is Vue conference 2019. So let's just copy that. Bam. Okay, so now I've got exactly, and I can just change the date. What is it? The 5th? I think it's the 5th. If I've got the date wrong, then oh my God, he's going to kill me again. So yeah, this is the same. If you Toronto, and instead of Toronto, it'll be remote. And the image is the same. I'm a speaker. My slides URL. No, I don't have the slides URL. Don't have a blog post yet. Country, Canada. Remote. Oh, it's so sad. I hate writing this word. This is not my talk. My talk is Hasura and Nuxt. So let's just put that in. I don't have a video URL. Let's just remove the description for now. Okay, so now I'm going to save this, right? And now I'm affected rows 1. Yeah, you've seen that that's inserted. So I've now got that actually in my database. So that is cool. So basically, I can, browse rows here. And if I just, sort the column ascending by date, for example, or descending probably. Let me see, run the query, and we should get our Vue Toronto, right? So we can see that we've added this in. This is here. This is great. So that was simple. Now, how do I, well, let me just go back to the slides for a second. This is how we added the data. So yeah, we have the endpoint, right? So you can see when we go to the GraphQL, this is where my endpoint is. That's my endpoint. So once I have that endpoint, I can add it into my application and use it. So that's cool. So they give you a GraphQL Playground, which basically gives you an explorer where you get to select everything you want. And then you just get, everything is done for you, and you press the play button and bang, you've got your data, right? Simple. Let me show you. So for example, if I wanted conferences and say I want, let me just remove this. This was me playing earlier. I don't need to know how to spell that. Lovely. Okay, conferences. So I want, for example, the alt tags. That's really important. Otherwise, I'll be given out for not being, accessible. I want the country. I want the date. I don't need the ID. I want the image. I want the name, the place, and the type. Okay, that I think that will do. Maybe the URL. Oh, no, we'll leave that. Okay, So press play, and now I've got all my conferences, right? Now this is showing me from 2019. That's the first conference that I ever spoke at, or did I, or not? I don't remember. So that's 2019. That's too far away. So let's order that. So we can just select order by date, and let's do descending, and press play. And now I get my view Toronto, right? So I can see now that my data is here. Everything is working perfectly, and I don't copy this at all. This is just here so I can see that it's kind of like, you know, working. But this is what I copy. So if I just copy this, it's gonna copy me everything I need here, and then I can just throw it into my Nuxt app, and bang, I've got my data. Cool, right? I know. Okay, so going back to the slides, Hasura and Nuxt, right? So how do we then get that data into Nuxt? So first what we do is we install and register HTTP. So you could use Axios. I'm using HTTP. They're both modules. So install it and then add it to my modules in my Nuxt config, so it's registered. And then I'm going to create a plugin. Now you can use Apollo for this, but I tend to prefer not to use Apollo because it's a little bit big. And for this application, it's not necessary, but Apollo is great if you're using like a massive application and you need all those extra things that Apollo gives you. If not, you can just make it really lightweight and create a plugin. So that's what I'm going to do. So basically, this is my plugin, right? So I've got my export default function, and I'm passing into context like the HTTP module, $config, so I can get my my runtime config values, and then I'm using inject. So I'm going to like inject that in. So I say const $hasura equals the http.crate, prefix my URL with what's coming from my runtime config, the API Hasura URL. I've set that in my Nuxt config. I'll show you that in a second. And then I use inject, and I say inject Hasura, and then I'm just like binding Hasura, right? So that's it. Just those lines of code is my plugin. Really simple, right? So I can then register the plugin. As you know, you go to your Nuxt config, you go plugins, plugins Hasura to register it. And then I can start importing my GraphQL from GraphQL tag, import print from the GraphQL language printer. And then I just need to add the query, right? So const query equals the query that I copied. Yeah, you've seen I copied that earlier. That's basically my query. Async data, I'm going to use async data. So I go async data, passing in app from context. Const data equals await app $Hasura. This is what I called my plugin is Hasura. Query, print query, and return conferences, data.conferences, right? I know, simple, right? Then I can just use it in my template. I can just go v4 conference and conferences, and then I've just like conference.name, and I can print out all my conferences. I know, that was just like so much to take in, right? Has it gone in one ear and out the other? I really hope it hasn't. Let me show you a little bit slower in code to make it a bit easier. So here's my code. Here's my my plugin, Hasura.js. So just going over this again, HTTP and config, using the inject, my const Hasura equals $HTTP create. I'm prefixing that URL with the config, right? This is the runtime config, and this is what I've called it. Let me show you that here. It's my public runtime config, my API Hasura URL, and it's basically just taking that URL. That's the endpoint, right, that I got from here, right? So you can see that that's here, is placed in here, and then I have access to it in the plugin through the $config, right, which I've passed in here. Because I'm injecting that in, I'm basically injecting Hasura, so I can refer to this now as Hasura, and yeah, I'm just binding this, what I've created here. So that's basically it in my Nuxt config. Obviously, I've registered my plugin, I have my runtime config, and then in my index page, don't mind the gzap, that's just animation. So I'm importing GQL from GraphQL tag, I'm importing print from the GraphQL language printer, and then I've got my query that I literally copied from the Hasura, yeah? So this is basically like copying this, just adding more things to it. So copy this, and we paste it in there as const query. And then we can use our async data, where we say async data, const data equals await app $Hasura. Remember, we got that from the plugin. And the query is print my query. And then return the conferences from that query, return conferences, data.conferences. And then I use it in my template. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? I hope that makes it a little bit easier. If you're still like mind-blowing, then yeah, I know it is mind-blowing. It's just so cool. So how does that work, right? So we've got our code in GitHub. We're deploying to Netlify. We Nuxt generate, right? So Netlify's done the Nuxt generate for us. We've generated our application. No, first it goes and it fetches that API. It goes to Hasura. It says, I need data. I need data. Can you give me that data? Hasura says, sure. Here's the data that you asked for. This is only the data, not every single data that I have in my database, but just what you asked for. Here you go. This is it. And then it basically generates the static HTML with the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript that you need for that page with that data coming from Hasura. Very cool. So what about data changing? Oh, Michael, you are really, really complicating my life right now. Okay, so there's a couple of things when it comes to data changing. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, I think I can show you. So I've got my application up and running, right? So it's running on localhost 8000 just because my 3000 was busy. So I've got 8000. So I've got my conferences, and you can see, right? We added this just a second ago. I've got my view Toronto. So this is working remote, Hasura and Nuxt. This is exactly what I typed in. Now imagine, so the title isn't correct, right? So I could basically say, oh, that title is not correct, and that's not the right talk. It's actually the same talk as I did here. So it's going static in a dynamic world with Hasura and Nuxt.js. So when it comes to changing data, we can actually use a live preview and preview things before we publish it, you know, because someone might give out to me and say that is wrong, and you need to update it. So what we can do is that we can actually add a preview. So let me see what I do. Yeah, no, I'll first show you how it works, and then I'll show you how I did it, right? So what we do is here, we add in preview equals true. So if I add in preview equals true, I'm now going to preview everything. And instead of it coming from the static payload folder, it's actually going to make that call every time. Every time I refresh that data or change that page, it's going to make that call to the API. So it means I'm able to see what's going on in live time, right? So this is wrong. So let's change it. Let's change it to this. And I'm just going to copy it so that it's easier. And I'm going to go back to my API, my Hasura, going to go to my data, go to my conferences table, and let me go to the date descending so I get the right one. And I've got my view Toronto, and this time I just want to edit it, right? So I want to go in, I want to change the talk. The talk is not Hasura and Nuxt.js. It's going dynamic, going static in a dynamic world with Hasura and Nuxt.js. So I'm going to save that now, and I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to refresh, and wow, I got my title. Now, if you go to the debbie.codes, right, which I've built the site again, but you see I've got Hasura and Nuxt there, but here I've got, so they are different, right? I can refresh that. It's still got Hasura and Nuxt, but my local one has got going static in a dynamic world, yeah? You seeing the difference? I'm getting a preview of what I've changed. And we can see this in the network tab. So we could go in here, have a look in the network, and if I click on workshops, you can see, go conferences, I'm getting my GraphQL call, I'm getting all my data, I'm getting absolutely everything. Whereas if I go into debbie.codes and I inspect this, I'm actually going to, it's going to probably use service workers because I've got this, but like, no, I'm not getting the call, right? It's using the service workers. If you don't have service workers here, it will show the payloads. Let me just refresh that. Yeah, it will show the payloads, and you're not seeing the call to that API. No matter how many times I click on here, I'm not going to get the API call. I'm not going to get the API URL. I'm just going to get this. So if I was to delete all my service workers, for example, then I would get that payload.json, and you can actually see that it comes from the payload. So that's how that works compared to here, where I'm getting all the data and I'm actually able to see my whole GraphQL API, able to see everything that's coming back, right? So you can see that, but you cannot see that when you're in full static mode, which is kind of good. It's cool. So basically, let me just close this so we can see this better. We've got our title. This is fantastic. This is how we work with the preview mode. How do we set up the preview mode? So live preview is basically set up by creating a plugin, and we say export default async function and query and enable query. We'll pass those in, and if query.preview, enable preview, sorry. If query.preview, enable preview, and that's basically it. We register our plugin, here we go, and that's all we have to do. Then we can just use our preview equals true. It's already now kind of remembered this, so it's already like, you know, cached it. So if you want to get rid of it, just clear your cache. And now I can preview every single change I make. Cool, right? So that's amazing, right? Now we can also generate an update. So we can do this very easily. And you saw that basically Debbie.codes, the actual website, was kind of a little bit updated. And you can probably see now if I refresh, it's probably going to show me, this is probably going to change now because it's probably gone through the Netlify build. Yes, it has, right? So this is like as live gets. This is actually just being built. So how did that just get built? I didn't like, you know, you didn't see me do Netlify anything here right now, right? So that gets done because, oops, there we go, that's better. Because we're generating an update, we're creating a new event trigger. So basically what we're doing is we're going into Netlify, we're going into Hasura first and we're creating an event, right? So we go back to here and we go to events, right? We can basically say create an event. So we create an event and we can call it generate on build or whatever you want to call it. Which table do you want? So I'm going to select the conferences one, and I want to only change it on insert because I'm only inserting, right? I don't want, or updating as well, because actually I'm updating data and inserting, or you could just do it on insert. That's up to you. You can add, you know, delete, and then you basically need to post in the webhook URL, and that's what you're going to get from Netlify. You post that in there, you create your event trigger, and bang, done. You can see I already have 2 triggers. I've got one for the conferences table and one for the workshops one. So that's basically it, like just what I showed you. And then the build hooks are in Netlify. You create your build hook from what branch, press save. That's going to give you this kind of URL thing that you get. You copy that and then you put it into your webhook URL in Hasura, and bang, then every time you browse, modify or delete some data or whatever you've set it up to do, it's just going to generate your build. Right, so that's really quick because it's like while you're waiting for Netlify, and Netlify is very, very quick, but while you're waiting, you can also have that preview. You can preview and then go, oh my God, I made a mistake, and then quickly like modify and change it, and then it's just going to be built again. So really, really cool. This is what it's doing. You're pressing in Hasura, you're going, my awesome new title, you're pressing save, it's going to Netlify, it's deploying, Netlify saying generate, fetch from the API, return that data. And then it's basically giving that static HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and you're getting that awesome new title on your website. And, you know, that's what full static, like, it's really, really cool. Remember with full static, you're calling the payload on page change. You saw we weren't calling that API. We weren't getting any of that from a server. The crawler is there for dynamic pages. So, you know, if you've got dynamic pages, you don't have to do anything to generate those. The crawler's going to like just find them and generate them. Brilliant. Live preview, we saw how that works, is really, really cool. Your build is cached, so you've seen how that works. And we only generate on content change, right? So I'm not building my website in Netlify unless my content actually changes, and it's changing every time I just like, you know, with that hook. So really, really, really cool. Yes, it is lightning fast, just like you, Michael. Exactly. So yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Why should you go static? Remember, there's no server. It's cheaper and safer. Better offline support, better performance, reduces the carbon footprint. Yes, why static? You can do it. Think static and be dynamic. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Are you Nuxt? Because I certainly am. I hope you all are after this, and I hope we all start playing around with the full static. Thank you very much, and bye.